wholeheartedly thank you for your passion for the Minnesota Vikings.
Minnesota.
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 Minnesota!
This year,
The Super Bowl comes to Minnesota.
the Super Bowl is coming to our home. Our home.
And we have the chance to make history.
This is our turf.
Our home. This is our North and we will defend it.
What's up, Vikings fans? We're asking North champs.
Go Vikings.
Go back. Let's go, baby. Got a long way to go. Let's go, baby.
A lot of guys working hard, but we gonna carry this fight, man. We ain't gonna never give up.
You know how we get down. Let's go, Vikings, baby. Let's go.
Let's bring it home.
Bring it home.
Bring it home for 52.
Let's bring it home for Bud.
Bring it home for the Purple People Eaters.
For Vinny. For the Met. The Dome. And our new home.
Bring it home for my old teammates. For all the blood, sweat, and tears.
Bring it home for Minnesota.
For NFL history. For Vikings everywhere.
Bring it home for 98. Bring it home for our community.
Bring it home for Minnesota.
Let's go, Vikes! Let's bring it home! What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Vikings Spin. I'm your host, Jason, and we've got a jam-packed show for you tonight. Vikings in the playoffs, NFC Divisional Round. The Vikings come into this game 13-3 from the regular season. They have a first-round bye, of course, so they were able to watch the wild card round. And emerging from that round was the New Orleans Saints. They beat the Carolina Panthers 31-26 in that wild card game. So the Saints come into this game now 12-5. And earlier this year, the Vikings beat the Saints 29-19 in Week 1 of the regular season. Of course, there were a lot of differences on both teams in that game, and we'll get to some of that. First, I want to go over some team news here. For the Vikings, both Pat Shurmur and George Edwards, our coordinators, have not been hired yet. There's been some openings around the league that have been filled, but they have not been hired yet. So as of right now, we still have both of our coordinators on board. And this bye week was huge because it allowed Kyle Rudolph, Xavier Rhodes, Pat Elflein, to name a few, to all get themselves nice and healthy for this ball game. And also Sam Bradford, a report today said he could be active and dressed as the number 2 quarterback for this ball game. So we'll see what happens here in the next 24 to 48 hours. But it would be awesome to have Sam back as he played a hell of a game in Week 1 against the Saints. Was Player of the Week that week and helped guide us to a win that week. But of course, it will be Case Keenum starting. And I have the utmost confidence in him as well to play well in this game. The offensive line, getting Elflein back, looks to probably be Reif, Berger, Elflein, Remmers, and Hill as the starting 5. And let's take a look at some team rankings here. Some interesting stuff that we'll get to. We'll go through the offense and defense. And then we've got some interesting stats about third downs and red zone as we take a look and examine this matchup more closely. Total offense, yards, the Vikings ranked 11th, Saints ranked 2nd. Total offensive points, Vikings ranked 10th, Saints ranked 4th. Total pass offense, the Vikings ranked 11th, the Saints ranked 5th. And total rushing offense, the Vikings ranked 7th, and the Saints ranked 5th. So you've got 2 top 10 offenses there. The Saints, a very explosive offense. And then defensively, the Vikings are number 1 overall in the NFL in defensive yards allowed. Saints ranked 17th. The Vikings number 1 overall in defensive points allowed. The Saints ranked 10th. Total pass defense is Vikings 2nd overall. The Saints ranked 15th overall. And total rush defense, the Vikings number 2, and the Saints number 16. So the Vikings are the best in the business on the defensive side of the ball. The Saints come in with an average unit. But where the big discrepancy is on third downs. The Saints offense ranked 19th in third down conversions, going up against the Vikings defense, which ranked number 1 overall in the NFL at stopping teams from converting third downs. Conversely, the Vikings offense ranked third in the league at converting third downs into first downs, and the Saints defense ranks 27th in that category in trying to stop teams on third down. So the Vikings definitely have the edge there on third downs. Red zone, the Vikings are also a top 10 unit offensively. The Saints defense is ranked 14th. And defensively, the Vikings are third overall in the NFL in red zone defense. Saints offense is ranked 8th. So it was a big key in that game, third downs in red zone, which allowed the Vikings to beat the Saints in week 1. It'll be a big factor again here, and I like the arrows pointing our way on that one. I could also say the arrows pointing our way on the injury reports because for the Vikings, they had full participation in practice this week. And the only player listed on the injury report is cornerback Terrence Newman, who did practice on a limited basis on today, actually. So it sounds like he's going to play anyways. The Saints have Brandon Coleman, their third receiver, ruled out. Linebacker Michael Mauti, who started the last couple of games when A.J. Klein got sent to injured reserve for the Saints. He's questionable. And earlier this week, the Saints had 2 players go to injured reserve. That's starting left guard Andres Pete, who was in the first game when we played them back in week 1, and rotational defensive tackle Tony McDaniel. So those 2 guys the Saints lost during this week. They join the Saints injured reserve list, which is at 20 right now. The Saints have 20 players on injured reserve. That includes the likes of Alex Anzalone, linebacker, A.J. Klein at linebacker, Okafor, he started at defensive end in the game against us. Kenny Vaccaro, who started at safety that week. Devontae Harris started at corner that week. John Kuhn at fullback. Zach Streif was the starting right tackle. He's on there as well. So definitely the Saints are coming into this game thin. Another one I forgot to mention there was tight end Kobe Fleener, who scored a touchdown in the game. He's not going to be active in this game. He's on injured reserve. So some changes have happened. The Saints, they've adapted and they've gotten Alvin Kamara more involved in their offense since. Of course, Adrian Peterson is no longer with the team. But, people saying things like Alvin Kamara didn't play or Marshawn Lattimore didn't play, that's simply not true. They both played in the Week 1 game, and Kamara actually had more touches than Adrian Peterson, so it's not like he didn't play. But, when I break down these individual matchups, some of the ones I'm going to be paying close attention to, Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen against the Saints cornerbacks. Now, Marshawn Lattimore, as good as he's been, and he's gotten better as the season's gone along, he doesn't travel in the slot. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if Adam Thielen is in the slot a lot like he was in the last game. Torched their nickel cornerback P.J. Williams in that game. And that's who is set to line up against him again. They might put Lattimore on Diggs, because Lattimore really doesn't play the slot. So that'll be interesting to watch there. Jet McKinnon and Latavius Murray against the front 7 of the Saints. They've got different linebackers now than they had before. As far as starters, they had A.J. Klein and Alex Anzalone. Now it's Craig Robertson, Monte Teo, and Michael Mauti are set to be the guys. If Mauti can't go, then it's going to be either Viking Gerald Hodges, who they picked up during the season. These guys, as far as coverage goes, they do struggle against tight ends in coverage. Robertson, and Von Bell, their safety. I don't think they'll be able to match up with Kyle Rudolph at 6'6". Rudy is a matchup nightmare, of course, for so many teams. Case Keenum, I'm very confident in Case's ability. He's been great all season long. Played at an MVP type level for the Vikings this season. And I think he'll be able to do a lot of the things that Sam Bradford did Of course, in his own way, Case likes to move around a little bit more, find throwing lanes in the pocket. He's a little shorter, so he likes to move around and get those throwing lanes, extend the plays. Extending plays could be huge against these inexperienced corners and safeties that the Saints are fielding, because the Saints, they don't have Kenny Vaccaro, so they're gonna rookie Marcus Williams is starting at safety. That's definitely something to keep an eye on there. Defensively, I like the matchups of the Vikings having Xavier Rhodes on Michael Thomas. He was able to shut him down pretty much in week 1. I like Trey Waynes going up against Ted Ginn, and I think Trey Waynes' level of play has definitely improved since week 1. Terrence Newman should be able to go, and I'm thinking that with Coleman out for the Saints, they're going to probably rotate Snead and Tommy Lee Lewis in there. They'll be in the mix as a third receiver or fourth receiver if they go 4 wide. Sometimes the Saints like to split Kamara out wide. In that case, the Vikings might put a corner out there, or they might roll with Jabbar and Kendricks. They've had a lot of success, Bar and Kendricks, this season against receiving type backs. So, but a big matchup that I'm really going to be keeping my eye on is with the Saints having Andres Pete out. He's the guy that's tasked with taking care of Linval Joseph and Tom Johnson inside. Now the Saints are going to try to back up left guard out there. They've got Max Unger, who's an average center. That should favor the Vikings inside and be able to help the Vikings shut down the Saints' running game, which to me is huge because, you make them drop back to pass. Primarily, I think the Vikings are much better than Carolina's secondary. I like Harrison Smith against their tight end Hill. I like Xavier Rhodes and Trey Waynes against Michael Thomas and Ted Ginn Jr. So I think that'll definitely play into the Vikings' hands if they can get it done. Some keys to the Vikings' victory, definitely I would say getting off to a fast start. Shut down the running game and make these guys one-dimensional. Get them in the 3rd and long so that you can pin your ears back and pass rush. Control the clock. I think the Vikings simply control the clock in this game and take away the Saints' ability for scoring opportunities. That just naturally works in your favor. The Vikings can do that by establishing the running game with Murray and McKinnon, and that, of course, sets up the play action passes where Case Keenum has just been absolutely outstanding this season. And when he really, in my opinion, gets in his comfort zone. And he'll be able to take care of, like you said, the inexperienced safeties and weaker cornerbacks and linebackers against the Vikings skill position players in the passing game. Defensively, disguise rush cover. Mike Zimmer stressed that this week. I think if the Vikings can force a turnover in this game, I think that would go a long way towards winning. Offensively, don't turn it over, limit the penalties. On special teams, the Vikings have been outstanding in flipping field position. Ryan Quigley has done an outstanding job in avoiding touchbacks and pinning teams down deep inside their own 20, inside their own 10. Making a team drive the length of the field like that against the Vikings defense definitely works in our favor. So that's the way I see it. Playing out here for the Vikings as far as keys to the game. I think that's what they're going to do. I don't think that's been a winning formula for the Vikings for most of the season. I don't expect either one of these teams, to reinvent the wheel. They are who they are at this point. I'm glad the Vikings are so healthy. And that they only had one player on the injury report, with Newman. He's likely going to play anyway. Bradford coming back to give us that quarterback depth, because you never know with the Saints and that coach Sean Payton. He's the same guy, that was coaching them for Bountygate. And Cam Jordan making comments this week about he wants to destroy the Vikings offensive line. He wants to destroy the Vikings running backs, and he must. I'm going to repeat that. He said he must destroy the Vikings quarterback. So the cheap shots, I'm glad we have Sam backing up Case in case there's any shenanigans going on there, for sure. Another key to this game is going to be the Vikings crowd. The crowd noise, getting to Drew Brees, not allowing him to hear himself, changing plays at the line, because he does a lot of that when he's successful. And the Saints have been a completely different team on the road in the playoffs. Brees has really struggled on the road in the playoffs. A completely different team the Saints are on the road than when they have their home field advantage. So that will definitely be working in our favor. So let's go. Let's bring it home here. And I thank you guys so much for tuning in to another edition of Vikings Spin. Don't forget to check us out on Twitter and YouTube. In the next sessions, we're gonna be trying to get video chat going with my guys Don Bueno and Ryan Bianconi. We'll see how that goes from here. But thanks guys for tuning in, and let's go on Sunday. Skol Vikes, bring it home. Take care.